The woman in the white blazer did not raise her voice. She never had to. She simply looked at the man who had just called security on her. The man whose company was hemorrhaging $40 million a quarter, whose board was quietly circling for a vote of no confidence, whose emergency financing had fallen through twice in the past 8 months. And she said, "I'll let my office know we're done here." Then she walked out of the Whitmore Grande's ballroom without looking back. That was a Tuesday. By Thursday morning, Hargrove Capital had withdrawn its letter of intent. By Friday afternoon, 3 board members of Calloway Industrial had resigned. And by the following Monday, when the story finally broke, it wasn't the assault that made headlines. It was the number, $800 million. Gone. Her name was Cecily Odum-Barnes, and she had grown up in a 2-bedroom apartment in the West End of Atlanta, where the hot water ran out before 6 in the morning, and the windows in the living room didn't fully close against the January cold. Her mother, Annette, worked the early shift at a hospital laundry facility, and came home smelling like bleach and institutional soap. Her father had left when Cecily was 4. He sent money sometimes, not often. She remembered doing homework at the kitchen table with a space heater pointed at her ankles, because the thermostat in their apartment was controlled by the building owner, who kept it at 62 degrees from November through March. She remembered her mother telling her, "Baby, when they see you walk in a room, they're going to see everything except what you've actually done. So make sure what you've done is so big they can't ignore it forever." Cecily had taken that advice and compressed it into something harder, something with an edge. She didn't make what she'd done big so people couldn't ignore it. She made it indispensable, so the people who ignored her paid a price for ignoring her. She started her first company at 23 with $11,000 she'd saved over 3 years, working nights at a data entry firm while finishing her computer science degree at Georgia State. The company failed in 18 months. She started another one at 25. That one lasted 2 years before a cash flow problem she hadn't anticipated forced her to close it. She didn't talk about those first 2 companies in interviews, not because she was ashamed of them, because people always tried to make the failure the story, and she refused to let the failure be the story. The third company, a logistics software platform she built with 2 co-founders in a shared workspace off Peachtree Street, was the one that changed everything. Nextbridge Systems. Launched 2012. Acquired 2019 for $470 million. By 41, Cecily Odum-Barnes had more money than she could spend in 3 lifetimes, a reputation in technology investment circles that made founders nervous and acquisitive executives respectful, and a single piece of wall art in her Atlanta office. A framed quote she'd written herself that said, simply, "The door will open. Be ready to walk through it." She didn't have a lot of patience for people who forgot the door hadn't always been open for everyone. The Whitmore Grande Resort's annual Calloway Foundation Gala was the kind of event that announced itself quietly and expected you to already know what it meant. No red carpet, no press at the entrance, just a curved driveway lit with warm Edison bulbs, a valet stand staffed by men in black gloves, and a guest list that had been curated with the particular care that old money applies to things it considers extensions of itself. Cecily had been invited by Warren Calloway III, the foundation's chair, and a man she'd known professionally for 6 years. They'd been negotiating a partnership. Hargrove Capital, the fund Cecily had quietly built over the past 3 years, was considering a significant investment position in Calloway Industrial, the Calloway family's manufacturing subsidiary. $800 million, structured across 4 tranches. It was not the largest deal Cecily had ever evaluated, but it was the most strategically interesting. And she had spent 7 months on the due diligence. She arrived that evening in a white blazer over a navy dress, her hair natural and pulled back, her only jewelry a watch her mother had given her the year Nextbridge sold. She'd driven herself. She almost always drove herself to things like this, not because she lacked the means to be driven, but because she liked the 10 minutes alone before she walked into a room. She found Warren near the bar, and they spoke for 20 minutes about the deal timeline. He was relaxed and confident. She was measured and precise. That was their dynamic. It had worked for 7 months. What she didn't know was that 20 feet away, at a table near the window, a woman named Dorothea Calloway Prutet was watching her arrive and had already decided, without any particular thought or investigation, who Cecily was and why she was there. Dorothea was Warren's aunt by marriage. She was 63 years old, had attended the Calloway Foundation Gala every year for 31 years, and had developed over those decades a very firm set of ideas about who belonged at events like this one. Those ideas were not written down anywhere. They didn't need to be. They operated below the surface of everything she said and did, invisible to her and very visible to everyone else. She was not, by any measure, a cruel woman in the way she understood cruelty. She donated to causes. She sent handwritten notes at Christmas. She remembered the names of the catering staff supervisors, if not the catering staff. She would have been bewildered and offended if anyone had called her a bigot, which was part of the problem. She saw Cecily near the bar, speaking with Warren, and she saw a black woman in what she considered an informal blazer who appeared to be, in Dorothea's mental accounting, out of place. Not because she had checked. Not because she had evidence. Simply because the image in front of her did not match the image she carried in her head of who belonged at the Whitmore Grande's Calloway Gala. She waited until Warren stepped away to take a call. Then she approached. Cecily was reading something on her phone, a message from her assistant about a document that needed her signature before midnight, when she heard a voice beside her. "Excuse me." She looked up. The woman beside her was immaculately dressed. Silver hair, diamond earrings, a particular kind of smile that didn't reach the eyes. "I don't think I recognize you," Dorothea said. "And I've been coming to this gala for over 30 years. Are you staff?" Cecily held the woman's gaze for 2 seconds before she spoke. "No. Well, I'm just asking, because this is a private event, and not everyone." Dorothea paused. "I'd feel terrible if someone had wandered in by mistake." "I was invited," Cecily said. "By whom?" Cecily didn't answer that. She had learned, somewhere around age 30, that some questions didn't deserve answers. The act of asking them was itself the insult, and answering them was participating in it. "If there's a concern about the guest list," Cecily said, "I'd suggest speaking with Warren." Dorothea's expression shifted. Not much, but enough. There was something in being directed toward Warren, in being handled, quietly and precisely, by someone who had refused to perform deference, that apparently crossed a wire. "I'm not speaking to Warren," Dorothea said, her voice dropping to a register that was meant to sound authoritative, and came out sounding something else entirely. "I'm speaking to you." And then she did something that, even later, when Cecily had told the story to the 2 people in her life she trusted enough to tell it to, seemed almost impossible to believe. She reached out and gripped Cecily's forearm hard enough to be felt. A gesture of control, of physical assertion. The message beneath it was very clear. "You will not walk away from me." Cecily looked down at the hand on her arm. The ballroom continued around them. The string quartet in the far corner shifted into something slower. Someone laughed loudly near the entrance. The bartender looked away. Nobody came. That was the part Cecily would think about later. Not the grip, not what Dorothea had said. The fact that of the 240 people in that room, people she had greeted, people who had nodded at her, people who had accepted drinks from the same bar, not one of them moved. She removed Dorothea's hand from her arm. Calmly, the way you remove something that doesn't belong where it has been placed. "Don't touch me," she said. And then she walked directly to the far side of the room, took out her phone, and called her attorney. Cecily's attorney was a woman named Brenda Farrell who had been practicing civil and corporate law for 26 years, and who answered her phone at 9:47 in the evening with the same flat professionalism she brought to everything. "Tell me," Brenda said. Cecily told her, concisely, in the order it happened. Brenda was quiet for exactly 4 seconds. Then, "Do you want to press charges tonight, or do you want to wait until morning and do it properly?" I want to do it properly, Cecily said. Then, document everything right now. Time, location, names of anyone who witnessed it. I'll have a formal complaint filed by 9 a.m. And the deal? Cecily said. That's your call, Brenda said. But you should make it from a place of clarity, and not from the room you're currently standing in. Cecily thanked her and hung up. She stood near the window with a view of the lit fountain outside. She thought about 7 months of work. She thought about the meetings, the documents, the analysts she'd pulled from other projects, the trips she'd made to Calloway Industrial's facilities in 4 states. She thought about Warren Calloway's face across a conference table, earnest and sure. She thought about her mother, who had never been invited to events like this one, who had worked the early shift at a hospital laundry her whole career, who had told her daughter to make what she'd done so undeniable they couldn't look away forever. She thought about the woman who had gripped her arm. She thought about the 240 people who had not moved. Then she took out her phone again and called Marcus Ellison, the senior partner at Hargrove Capital, who managed deal operations. Marcus, she said, I need you to send the withdrawal notice for the Calloway position. Tonight. There was a pause. Marcus had been with her for 4 years. He knew her well enough not to ask if she was sure. Full withdrawal, he said. Full withdrawal, she said. Effect immediately. Standard language. No further comment? Done, he said. She put her phone in her clutch. Then she went to find Warren Calloway. She found him near the entrance, laughing with 2 men in identical dark suits. He saw her approaching, and something in his expression shifted. Some reading of her face, maybe, or some recognition that the evening had gone sideways in a way he hadn't anticipated. He excused himself from the men in the suits and met her a few steps away from the crowd. Cecily, he said, I've been looking for. Warren, she said. I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear it clearly. He straightened. She told him what had happened, not with drama, not with heat. She told him the way she would tell anyone about a sequence of events, in order, with specifics, without editorializing. When she finished, Warren's face had gone the color of the limestone wall behind him. Cecily, he said, I am so sorry. I had no idea. I don't know what she was. That is completely unacceptable. I know, she said, and I mean that. I believe you didn't know. That's not what this is about. Then let me talk to her. Let me get this resolved. Warren. She said his name quietly, the way she said things when she needed someone to stop talking. Hargrove has withdrawn from the Calloway investment. The notice went out 10 minutes ago. The color drained from his face so completely that a man standing nearby glanced over. Cecily, this isn't about your aunt, she said. Or not only about her. 240 people were in that room, Warren. I know some of them saw what happened. Not one person said anything, not to her, not to me, not to you. That's not about one woman's behavior. That's about the room. And I've been trying to decide, for the past 7 months, whether I wanted to put $800 million in a room like that. She let that sit for a moment. I have my answer now, she said. Warren looked at the floor. He was not a bad man. She had always believed that. He was, in many ways, a decent man who had built his life inside a set of systems he had never had reason to question, and who was encountering at 9:53 on a Tuesday evening in the ballroom of the Whitmore Grande Resort the cost of that particular comfort. Is there anything? He started. Your firm needs capital, she said. You'll find it. You have assets and you have relationships. But going forward, Warren, and I'm saying this because I've respected the way you've worked with me, you need to decide what kind of room your name is on, because the next person who walks in wearing something your aunt doesn't recognize might not be walking out of a deal. She might be walking into a lawsuit that puts your board on the front page. She picked up her clutch from the table beside her. Good night, she said, and she walked out. The drive back from the Whitmore Grande took 41 minutes on a highway that was mostly empty at that hour, and Cecily used the time the way she often used drives, without music, without podcasts, with just the road ahead and whatever her mind needed to do. What she felt was not triumph. She had known some people would expect her to feel triumph. Later, when the story got out, and it did get out, She had known some people would call it karma, or justice, or a win. She didn't feel that way. She felt something closer to grief, the specific and particular kind that comes from confronting a room full of people who had made a choice and chosen indifference. The grip on her arm hadn't surprised her. She wished it had. She wished she could say she had never felt the weight of a hand that believed it had the right to hold her still. But she had. She had felt it in offices and boardrooms and airport lounges and parking structures and places she would not have expected to feel it. She had learned to carry the knowledge the way you carry a stone in your pocket. Always there, heavier on some days, easier to forget on others. What surprised her still was the math. Not the 800 million. Not the board resignations that would follow, or the investigation her attorney filed the next morning with the local police department. A filing that resulted, 10 days later, in Dorothea Calloway Pruitt being cited for misdemeanor battery, which was not a felony but was public, documented, and permanent. Not the 3 industry publications that ran the story. Not the statement Warren Calloway issued, or the internal review the foundation announced, or the diversity consultant they hired afterward. A gesture so belated and so clearly self-protective that Cecily didn't bother commenting on it. What still surprised her was the math of the room. 240 people, at least a dozen who had seen it, 0 who had spoken. She had done the math on rooms like that for most of her adult life. She knew the calculation people ran in their heads in the moment, the social cost, the discomfort, the fear of being wrong or being loud or being conspicuous. She understood the calculation. She didn't accept it anymore. She hadn't in a long time. But she understood it. What the people in that room didn't understand. What they would understand, she supposed, when the story ran, was that silence had its own math, that the calculation they'd made in the moment had a balance that came due later, that the cost of looking away was paid by someone, and the choice they'd made was to let Cecily pay it, and to pocket the social comfort themselves. She pulled off the highway and drove through the quiet streets of Buckhead toward home. She thought about calling her mother. It was late. Annette was 71 now, and she slept early, but she also kept her phone on the nightstand, and she would want to know. She would want to know because she was Cecily's mother, and because she had cleaned laundry in a hospital and raised her daughter in an apartment with 62-degree winters and told her to make what she'd done so undeniable they couldn't look away forever. Cecily decided she'd call in the morning. She would tell her everything, the grip, the room, the withdrawal, the drive home. And her mother would listen, and then she would say something that would probably make Cecily laugh, and then cry a little. And then she would say, "Baby, you did right." Cecily believed she had. What she had not done, she wanted to be clear about, was set out to destroy anything. She had not called Marcus from that ballroom because she wanted to hurt the Calloway family, or because she was running on adrenaline, or because she wanted to see Warren's face when she told him. She had called Marcus because she had arrived at a conclusion after 7 months of evidence, and the evening had added one final and decisive data point. The decision had been coming. She had known it was coming for several weeks and had not yet admitted it to herself, because she had been invested in the deal being something she wanted it to be. A partnership, a bridge, a way of doing business with people who were beginning, however slowly, to understand that the landscape had shifted. She had wanted it to be evidence of something. Instead, it was evidence of something else. She had learned to trust that. The deals she regretted were the ones where she had known something and overridden it because she wanted the version of events where it wasn't true. She didn't do that anymore. She hadn't, really, since the second failed company, which she had kept alive 6 months past, the point of clear evidence, because she loved it too much to read what the numbers were saying. The night of the gala, in the car on the way home, she made a note in the app she used for professional reflections, a habit she'd developed 3 years ago on the advice of a business coach, who told her that her pattern recognition was excellent, but her documentation of it was non-existent. The note said, "When the room tells you who it is, the right move is to believe it." She had heard some version of that before. She wasn't sure where. It didn't matter. It was true. The battery citation was issued on a Thursday 12 days after the gala. Cecily's attorney, Brenda Farrell, had filed the complaint the morning after. As promised, with a full written account, the names of 4 witnesses Cecily had identified from the guest list, and documentation of the injury. A bruise on Cecily's forearm, photographed within an hour of the incident. The citation was not an arrest. It was not a felony charge. Some people, reading the coverage, expressed frustration about that. They wanted something larger, something more commensurate with what they felt had happened. Cecily understood that. She shared some of it. But she had made the decision to pursue the legal mechanism that matched the documented incident, and she would not inflate it for the satisfaction of a headline. The citation was public. It was permanent. Dorothea Calloway Pruitt's name appeared in the court record attached to the word battery, in connection with a specific date and a specific location and a specific victim. Cecily had been told, by someone who knew the family, that Dorothea had been devastated and blindsided by the citation, and had reportedly told family members that she had only been trying to help. Cecily had no comment on that. She had been, she thought, very clear in the moment about what Dorothea had been trying to do. The story ran first in a tech industry newsletter, sourced anonymously. Within 48 hours, it had been picked up by 2 national outlets. The headline that got the most traction read, "Hargrove Capital, CEO, withdraws $800 M deal after physical assault at Gala. Family matriarch cited for battery." Cecily did one interview. She gave it to a black woman journalist at a publication she had been reading since she was 29. She answered every question directly and without performance. When the journalist asked her whether she considered what had happened a win, Cecily was quiet for a moment. "I don't think about it in those terms," she said. "What happened was a violation. The legal process gave it a name and a record. The business decision I made was one I had to make regardless. If you're asking whether I feel vindicated, I feel like I made a decision I can live with, which is the only standard I know how to use." "Do you think the Calloway family understood what they lost?" the journalist asked. Cecily thought about Warren's face. The limestone color, the particular way a man looks when the floor he assumed was solid, turns out to have been suspended all along. "I think they understood the number," she said. "Whether they understand the rest of it is something they'll have to sit with." The article ran on a Friday, and by Monday morning had more reader engagement than anything the publication had run in 8 months. Cecily's phone rang 47 times that day. She answered 3 of the calls: her mother, Brenda, and a founder she was advising who had seen the piece and wanted to make sure she was okay. She was okay. She had been okay since the drive home from the Whitmore Grande, when she had decided what she believed about what had happened and had named the decision she was making, and had moved forward from it with the clarity she had worked her entire adult life to build. She called her mother back first. Annette picked up on the second ring. She had read the article. Someone had sent it to her. A friend from her church who had texted at 7 in the morning. "Baby," Annette said. "Hi, Mama. Are you okay?" "I'm okay." There was a pause. Cecily could hear the television in the background, turned low the way her mother always kept it in the mornings. "That woman grabbed you," Annette said. It wasn't a question. She did. And nobody in that room did a thing. No. Annette was quiet for a moment. Cecily knew that silence. It was the silence her mother used when she was choosing between things she could say and the thing she was actually going to say. "You know what I keep thinking about?" Annette said. "I keep thinking about those winter mornings, when you used to do your homework at that kitchen table with that little heater at your feet." "I remember," Cecily said. "You never complained," Annette said. "You just did your work. You always just did your work." Cecily didn't say anything. She was sitting in her home office, facing the wall where the framed quote hung. "The door walked through it. They thought they knew who you were," Annette said. "Before you even opened your mouth. They did, and now they know what that cost them." Cecily exhaled, slow, even, the kind of breath that carries something out of you. Yeah, Mama, she said. Now they know. She didn't feel like a woman who had won something. She felt like a woman who had done what the moment required, who had held on to her own name and her own judgment in a room that had tried, for one brief and ugly moment, to take both from her. She felt like a woman who had made a call from the Whitmore Grande ballroom that $800 million worth of evidence now confirmed was correct. And she felt, underneath all of it, the low and steady thing she had carried since she was a girl doing homework at a cold kitchen table in the West End of Atlanta. The certainty that the work she had done was hers, that no room could take it, and that no hand, however certain of itself it had been in that moment, could hold her still.